second half of the session. Very we have next. I just want everyone to calm down. Then we can invite the panel to come on stage. This is going to be quite nice and juicy. And thank you that we are at a space where we can give the Black child the correct history, because if we leave it to Media 24, we're going to be in trouble. So, right? It was a great honor and privilege. My job is very easy today. It's just to be the platform who makes sure that the people don't hog the mic and to make sure that the mic does get around to everybody. I would like to introduce Adv Muzi Sikhakhane. I know you guys know him as Father's lawyer. That's what he's most famous for. If you please can come join us on stage. I'd like to introduce Adv Dali Mpofu, the people's advocate. You know. And obviously the lady of the moment. We are so excited to be here. Thank you so much, Mkhwebane, for making sure that we connect as the professionals. So please put your hands together for Adv Busisiwe Mkhwebane. Yes. So as I said, so I'm actually going to start on the far end, because what I picked up from the energy of the three people on stage was that their mentor must be Adv Sikhakhane, because I can just sense, so these are your children. Obviously, I have to give you the mic first. Age before beauty. We would like to know who you are, because the only thing that the media has taught us is that you're Jacob Zuma's lawyer and you are bad news.
Unfortunately, both those descriptions are true. Both those descriptions are true. Bad news, and I used to represent him before Dali. He was my opponent. Yeah, my name is Muzi, and there's a dispute about where I come from. Whether I'm a Sowetan or I come from Pietermaritzburg. I come from both. Pietermaritzburg is a place that chased me out as a teenager. Soweto is a place where I became an activist without being stopped. I'm a senior counsel in Johannesburg. I was in the Joburg bar. I've been an advocate for more than 20 years. I was a lecturer before that. I was a school teacher before that in Soweto. I've been an activist since I was 16. So the reason really I don't mind being hated is because I've been hated by systems since I was a teenager. And it doesn't bother me because I know who I am.
Do you wanna, I want people to understand where you come from, because you straddle the update era and the judiciary then and now. So I want us to understand the dynamics around that space, especially for you.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing. I'm not good at tracking, so I'm trying this. I only brag to Dali. No, I think the system for me is, I've known the system for a long time, and I think that's why I'm much more aligned with the underdog. It's because I'm the underdog. I grew up very, very, very poor from a rural community. I was an activist since I was 16, and I've known the system since my first detention as a teenager. And so I think the misunderstanding that I see is not actually a misunderstanding. No one misunderstands me, and no one misunderstands all of us. I think we are deliberately mischaracterized because we are Black. And And that's why you know me as Jacob Zuma's lawyer. I don't mind, he's a human being. But you don't know who represented a white pedophile just this year. He was a white lawyer representing a white pedophile who raped more than 20 black boys. And you're so obsessed with just one black guy who represents a former president. Of course, the reason for this is very easy. It's because where we come from for centuries. And that's why many people were worried about dysfunction. Who wants to be associated with Brian? Who wants to be associated with Dali or Mkhwebane? The reason people pulled out of this thing, if they did, or were worried, is because we live our lives worried about how white people see us. And so a lot of us, because I think from in the depths of our consciousness, we are white. We live to serve white interests. It means we define ourselves. So one white guy called all of these people corrupt. And there was panic in the country because white opinion matters too much, because we were, what I think you will understand this as a spiritual person. I actually think black people were spiritually castrated.
True.
We dislike ourselves, we have a different characterization of who we are. And that's why people call this gathering a gathering of the wounded. And you believe it because it's said by people who have resources, who are white, and therefore you fear being associated with it. It's because we fear being associated with who we are and ourselves. And I always think you just have to be yourself. I don't need to celebrate. I'm not black excellent. I'm just me. I'm just me, and I'm not competing with any person, no white person. I don't worship them. I don't fear what they say. They don't describe what I must like and define who I am. And so, as I said, it's a long answer to you, but I'm who I am because the system has been like this to me for the past about 40 years of my life.
So then in that 40 years of being victimized and is there like a highlight? What is it that you can walk away and say, you know what, this was worth it because?
Yeah, it's a difficult question to ask now, because if you had asked this question some time ago, I would have said freedom, when I believed it was. So it's a difficult question to ask me about the highlight now, because we live at this time when I think black South Africans have been betrayed completely by people who call themselves their leaders. So it's a very difficult thing for me to say the highlight in this struggle. But I think the highlight for me is things like this, where black people on their own, without seeking approval from anybody, are beginning to speak about who they are and where they want to be without fearing. I actually salute each individual who's in this room. Because you actually, by being here, you defy the inner fear that you had of being associated with Carl Niehaus, with Mkhwebane, with Brian, with me. It means you know who you are.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. I will keep in. Okay. No, let me start with the gentleman because, this party will leave her for the end.
By the way, for the record, he's older than me, but it's okay.
And on that note, we're on to the people's advocates. We have grown with you. I think you've also grown with us. And I want to know how you've managed, we want to know how you've managed to, that balance between being in the code of the outside of ANC and still pushing your work as a black leader.
Well, thank you. I don't know about the code.
Yeah, you're not feeling it. Somehow you struck the balance. I think it's because you married into the ANC.
No, thank you very much. Thank you. Firstly, just to thank the organizers of this event for, I suppose, as Muzi has indicated, just selecting us really to speak. But everyone, it could have been anyone else in this room, really, and speak about these kinds of experiences. Well, briefly, by way of introduction, before I answer your question, I'm Adv Mpofu. I was born in a place called Duncan Village in East London, but my parents came from a rural area near King Williamstown. I think what defined me really, if I have to brag about anything, it would be to brag about the woman who gave birth to me. Because it was, when I try to trace all these things that you're asking me about, it goes back to that. I grew up in a very, very, very poor environment. Like most people, my mother was a domestic worker and so on. But I think that the first aspiration I ever had, I mean, I hated school, like any child. But I think on the day that I could make a connection between going to school and alleviating the lot of my mother, and thinking that maybe if I take this sacrifice of waking up and going to school, one day I can get something, buy a car or whatever, then it was worth it. So from that, we can start from that tiny aspiration until maybe, I don't know, about between ages of 14 and 15 when they killed Steve Biko. Then at that point, I made a definite decision that I was going to dedicate the rest of my life to not just liberating my mother, but liberating all Black people. And that it was that simple. In fact, sorry to divert, there's a funny story about this, how sometimes we undermine our parents. So my mother used to come with a copy of the Daily Dispatch, which is the paper in East London, from the white people. Karen knows the Daily Dispatch, my former classmates. And so we would always get the newspaper 2 days afterwards when the white people have finished reading. So this must have been, if Biko was killed on the 12th, it must have been the 14th of September 1977, that my mother brought this newspaper. And she always told this story when she was alive. I just took this paper, threw it away, and walked out. And she's wondering, what's wrong with this child? So then I said, they've killed him. And and mother said, Bang. Now, instead of explaining to her what was still bigger, she said, I'm only putting up here. Like it's a long story. So I said, why did you say I'm sending a new put here? Anyway, so that was, it was between 14 and 15. I was between 14 and 15. To cut a long story short, I quickly implemented that resolution of mine. I spent my 18th birthday in a jail cell with other in 90-day detention that Advocate Susan was talking about. Because at that point I knew that if it meant that, then it meant that this is what I was going to do. Fast forward, then I became aware after that case of sabotage and harassing that I was charged with. I went to work literally as a laborer at Mercedes-Benz, South Africa. Made cars there until they retrenched for the people who were organizing for the union. Then I went back to school. And work came to Vegas, the rest is history, as they say. But yeah, for me it's really when people say, how do you do it? I don't understand, because as I say, I cannot imagine myself not struggling for the liberation of Black people. I don't know what I would do. I don't know what I would do to wake up in the morning if it wasn't for that. So it doesn't matter whether I'm here or I'm at the SABC or I'm at the law school or whatever, or at Vegas as a student. I just do what I do, and it comes natural. So, and that's why when people talk about, as Moses said, Black excellence and all that, you just wonder what are these people talking about, because you're just doing what comes natural. But later maybe I'll talk about the negative side, because people think, how do you cope and what? I don't even that doesn't make sense to me. I don't cope with what? Like all this negative, what on Twitter. I mean, Twitter, I only read it when I'm breaking between reading when I want to have what you call it, comic relief. Yeah. Comic relief. So I don't care what anyone else. I think what someone from the previous panel talked about, defining yourself. I know myself. I know my strengths. I know what I'm good at. I don't need any affirmation. And maybe I should stop it at the point that Muzi was talking about. The most dangerous and objectionable black person in the context of our history is anybody who lives to seek white approval. That's the biggest disease. It's bigger than it's bigger than any disease you can think of. Because then you must always be checking, am I still a good boy? And the minute they say, no, you're not like the others, and so on, you feel all puffed up. In fact, I'll probably go the other way around, where I'm making my job to annoy them, if it's possible. So if they're not annoyed, then I get worried, then there's something
Thank you. On that note, thank you, Mkhwebane, because I know this gig was meant to be for really chubby, but thank you.
Did you see her latest? Did you see her latest dance? Already?
About her son in prison.
No, she's an ambassador.
You know what I did notice, Advocate
I'll share with you.
The court, and even you, Advocate Muzi, the cases you lose are the ones against the big dogs. Do you want to give us the technicalities on how you lose these cases that are so obvious to us?
Dustbin in lamp.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I saw someone who wrote that does Dali ever win a case? and I said to this person,
Against who? Dustbin.
More than 400 cases. How many do you know? This person could quote 5. But it's a narrative. It's a narrative that, I think it's designed, and I've seen it now, this persecution of particular black lawyers who represent particular people. It's designed to frighten young black lawyers to know what's coming for them if they don't do what their white bosses want. And so I ignore it because, and it's difficult. I mean, Dali has a thicker skin than me. He doesn't care. It does get to you because it doesn't end with you. It ends with your children. People go to a university to your daughter. People don't really know what it is. So you ask them. I always ask people this question. These cases you think are being lost. Except one, Dali was my opponent at that point, and they were winning against Zuma. And I said to my junior, anyone who is representing, who's litigating against Mkhwebane, against Arthur Fraser, against Zuma, any lawyer standing up in a South African court can actually stand up and say the Lord's Prayer and say, Hail Mary, full of grace, and win.
Oh, goodness.
They have nothing to do with the law. And all of these cases, people, they will see this the day they need justice. We don't see it because these cases are about people we dislike. And justice is actually, I've said this so many times, the test for justice is how we treat people we don't like. That's the test. And so, all of this, I keep hoping that one day our judges will rise up, will wake up, and not be hooked up to the interests of political elites, so that we dispense justice to an ordinary person who's not liked, So I think the cases you're talking about, I've done hundreds of cases, right? And I tell my juniors when they're frustrated and you're representing Mkhwebane, I said, you're gonna lose. You must know before you start. You are going to lose, but let's argue to the best of our abilities for the client. And you leave at tea time. I used to leave at tea time at the court, and you get someone who writes you kefa something on your, and you must still go back and hold yourself together in front of 4 TV cameras with journalists who will say nothing nice about what you're doing. And you must be able to commit yourself to a client, but also commit yourself to the concept of representing somebody who needs justice, regardless of who they are. And that's how I say it. So what people call losses in court, well, I call them victories for justice, for exposing to people the rots they live in. And you will see this the day your son is accused of rape for nothing. And you will see it the day your wife, your husband go through this. That day, you will need a lawyer who's brave, who doesn't mind what your enemies think. I could never take a lawyer who stands up to represent me but is worried about people who dislike me, how they see. I would want a Dali Mpofu when I'm in trouble, who doesn't mind ruining his reputation for me. That's a lawyer every human being needs. You don't need a lawyer who's pleasing white people, who's pleasing political elites, who's pleasing everybody else, worried about his reputation when you've paid him to deliver justice for you.
So, you want to comment?
Okay,
Yes,
maybe I should just add, well, it's really adding, because when it's good that you asked that question to Muzi first, because I think, as he says, he has made this statement, and I don't know how many people have actually internalized it. He has made this statement several times on several platforms, that the test for justice is how we treat those that we don't like. You know, it's a very powerful statement that I think all of us should think about, because you don't reserve justice for the Pope, right? Justice, the person who deserves justice is the pedophile, the mass murderer, the rapist. That's the person who needs justice, because they have already been condemned already by society, by all of us, because that's our natural instinct. So that's when it is that person who needs an advocate. This thing called advocate means it's someone who's going to be standing in your corner and showing, not saying you did not murder the person or whatever, but maybe this is what happened. Maybe in your personal background, there are certain aspects that need to be highlighted. Maybe that person provoked, and so on and so on. So that when the court, in the end, comes to a conclusion, it has that full picture. That's what justice is all about. And so this the story about losing is very interesting, because as Muzi says, well, maybe just to go back, because the PP said we must be positive.
Yeah.
Let me and start bragging.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I'm saying this. Normally, I'm a very humble person. I know that's Muzi will testify. But today I'll make an exception. I can tell you this much. I can put money on it. There is not a single lawyer or advocate or senior counsel in this country who works harder than I do, who dedicates themselves into a brief, and who specifically, by the way, those who think it's about losing. I am not interested in taking cases where I know that I'm going to win. Actually, I turn them away. I don't do those things. Why? There are 1,000 other advocates who can do your contract or the car accident. I want a case where somebody says, this, you are completely out of your mind. It's never going to be done. Then I say, okay, now I'm interested. And all the big cases that I've done, whether it was the Nkanya case, the secret ballot case, the impeachment case, there are many big cases that we did, were cases like that, where even when I was discussing it with my colleagues, they think, yeah, okay, sure. Yeah. As you can see that they think, no, this will never happen. Then you go and do it, and you derive joy from that kind of feat. But for the other cases, I said this to a judge, and they thought I was maybe overstepping, because he said something quite cynical when I was explaining to him. I think it was about private prosecution. I was explaining the philosophical background to this. Then he says, "No, carry on. We know about this." So I said, "No, I know. I mean, if the only time you address the judge is when they don't know the law, then we'll be in trouble." So and number one. Number two, I'm not addressing only you, I'm also addressing the public. Now that's something that's important. That's why we have those television cameras there. It's not because we just want to be on television. It is the reason why you have television cameras in a public interest case is because the public, the South African public, has an interest in that matter. And that decision is not made by me, but it is made by the media to say this is a matter of public importance. And therefore, when I'm speaking there, I'm also addressing those people. The reason why courtrooms are, there are things that we take for granted. The reason why courtrooms are open, like any member of the public, you can go and sit in court. Nobody's going to say, what are you doing here? Are you part of this case? Why? Because you represent the public. A courtroom is not for the lawyers, it's not for the judges, it's not even for the litigants, it's for the public. And once the public understands that Busisiwe Mkhwebane is being called incompetent, when she's the first public protector to produce 3 clean audits. Because our people, they don't have to go to LLB, or university, or any school. They're not stupid. They know. They listen to those cases, and they know exactly where and how the injustice has happened. If a Jacob Zuma is being sent to jail, and you can demonstrate to the people at home, not those 11 people sitting there, that of the 10,000 prisoners in South Africa who are sitting in jail right now, there's only one who has never stood in front of a court and say, I'm guilty or not guilty. That's all. I'm happy. Win. That's my win. When people understand that depth of that injustice.
Okay, so in our entire history, we always have these firebrand women that just pop up somewhere and then we're like, yeah, blinded. And I think for the past couple of months, that's what Adv Muzi has been to us. When we just open our tweets, we're like, yeah, she's spoken and she hasn't held back, and she, even when they turn off her mic, she continues talking. So she didn't give them a chance, she didn't give them a chance to lie about her. She was like, oh, I would have the last word. We are so proud of that. We are so proud of you. We are so proud of you. So now we want to know the story of who is this girl? How did she climb up? And then, because you climbed up quietly, and then you were this huge force, and now you are this force that is intimidating the whole system just by having a lunch party. The white people are uncomfortable. So let's break it down. How did this journey come?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Advocate Susan. I'm sitting between the giants and learning from them. And not even them, but learning from you, learning from everyone. I mean, for you to stand and be called names, that's what we need to do. But Busisiwe, I was born in Betar, and I grew up in Kwaggafontein, dusty roads, Zakwandebele. They are still dusty. Ish, that's the painful part. So I grew up there, my schooling there. I went to University of the North, Limpopo, studied BProc. By then, we only had BProc and LLB. So LLB was our master's, it was our honors in the way, yes. So I did BProc and LLB. I was funded by the Kwandebele government to study law. Yes, and then I worked as a prosecutor, though I was not a prosecutor, or just, yeah, that's what I was labeled by one of the witnesses to someone. So aspirant, yes.
Yeah.
But I worked as a prosecutor. Then I moved from Kwandebele, worked in Pretoria, head office justice, had to be exposed to extradition law, trained in Siracusa, Italy, about extradition law, mutual legal assistance, worked at Human Rights Commission as well to check the implementation or whether people are realizing or we are enjoying these rights which are provided for in the Constitution. Then I worked a public protector before as senior investigator. So I've been there on the trenches, and destiny brought me as the head of that particular institution. Some years later, I then worked in Home Affairs. Most of my time, when I check, I worked a lot in human rights, humanitarian spaces. Worked in Home Affairs as the Director of Refugee Affairs. In Africa, they call them Commissioner of Refugee Affairs, responsible for processing asylum seekers, refugees, their rights. I mean, I remember at home most of the time when some of the people are labeling them, this and that, I will just call them to order because I could feel their pain. I mean, people won't leave their country, the comfort of their homes, and cross rivers and come to our country with nothing, women, children. So those we processed and we granted refugee status, we could understand what they were facing. So then, whilst working in Home Affairs with family challenges by then, and seeing, in fact, during the 2008 Zimbabwe turmoil, we had to process thousands and thousands of asylum seekers then who came to South Africa and make sure that we document them. What I'm mentioning all this just to show that it was never about me. It was about how can I make a life of another person to be comfortable and habitable. So when I worked, I was then sent to work in Beijing, China. In China, you have the mission. It's like those who would want to know more. In mission, the ambassador is like your president, a representative of South Africa in that country. So I was then representing Home Affairs to process visas and everything. So I stayed in China for 4.5 years, and it was something also which contributed to who I am today, knowing and not judging, be culturally intelligent and understand that, this is how you treat human beings, because more than anything else, how we treat each other as human beings. So this is who Busisiwe Mkhwebane has been, and I have traveled up and down, the spy issue. Came back to South Africa. I was working in immigration, Home Affairs, still refugee affairs, doing country of origin. Country of origin means when you say you are from DRC and you running away from your country because of persecution based on this, then we'll do research. We have to go and check whether indeed that is the situation. Are people of that or sexual orientation or whatever being persecuted? and then support then the refugee status determination officers. I went so well with Ambassador Langa in China, and I then said, you know what, I would want to also contribute in another space at State Security Agents. And that's when I also then requested that in case you've got any opening, I would want to change, because I was at Home Affairs for more than 20 years. And then he said, we do have an opening, and then I went for State Security for only 3 months when I'm able to spy. And DA alleged that I was in the payroll of SSA, yeah. But that's who I am, and it's God's way of doing things, because I had to go and work there and understand other dynamics about the countries before then I was elevated to become the public protector of the country. In this whole
Because I mean, you've been on a roller coaster this past year. Which part is there a part where you felt powerful? Where was it that you claimed your power? Because you thought you claimed your power, but you want to know what moment was it?
Kevin, well, it's not roller coaster. I mean, since I started 2016 when I was labeled a spy, and it has been like that. The issue of the CX report, the issue of being the enemy of the state, you know, my mother's pictures all over. So all those were just trying to make sure that they blame me. So I had that since the beginning, because when I started Public Protector and understanding what is the mandate of that institution, and fortunately even the Nkandla judgment, Mkhwebane's judgment, explaining what a remedial action should be doing.
Yeah. So
then I caught that, and I had to make sure that, you know, and it has been difficult. I think you asked Advocate Sikhakhane the issue, which he knows both sides of the law and the upper bit and under. So for me, also, I was just focusing on those. Yes, we have this legislation, but how can we then radically make sure that we change the status quo? So I've been intentional in changing the status quo. I know I've been labeled the wrong public protector and everything, but my intention was, we have these laws. We need to make sure that these laws are operational and are implemented for our own benefit. Yes, in the beginning I was finding a lot of the CIC said a Twitter space is not, I mean, it's not a child's play. They are who are one. So that's very tough. Because when you say anything, Zuma moved because that's where the problem started in South Africa. Because people were then brainwashed and over and over. That's why this thing of who you relate with, whether you had a meeting with this family, you met this family, and at the end of the day, then media made sure that they repeat it over and over and over and over. So me introducing myself as the head of a Chapter 9 institution to say, President Zuma, it's a meet and greet. It was then all hell broke loose, and it's like you shouldn't. That's the problem I'm having, and that's what we need to change going forward. And you can relate to any person. I mean, it was an issue. Somebody was laughing that I was in trouble. Oh, the issue of Msebenzi. At my 50th birthday, it was an issue to why Msebenzi or Bongo was there. People, I mean, Bongo, for instance, coming from the same area you're coming from, just because the person is attending, bringing a friend, and a Palatinus Baban, even now, some people brought additionals, you know, because this is a twin. So I think I had to tell myself, which I put cotton balls in my ear, and I focus and I go forth. Whether they report whatever, I don't read those negative things. I just focus on the positives. I think that's what made me to reclaim my power and focus on those.
I'm sure there are definitely questions in the audience, now that it's a bit warm. We've got a question from Carl. I don't know if someone can help with the microphone. Yeah. You know, as Black people, we really need to work on ourselves, and that style of ours, where we allow other people to tell us who we can be friends with, is really childish. It's really childish. Thank you. Guys, please remember to introduce yourselves, and there's 3 questions at the moment.
Thanks, Nsiki. Well, I'm Carl Nias. I'm a very deliberate former member of the ANC. The president of the African Radical Economic Transformation Alliance. And I was reminded about, just as a quick aside, how I was in trouble because apparently I was seen 3 years ago in a Santon restaurant with someone who looked like Adv Mkhwebane. And that became a major story in News 24. But anyhow, that's not what I wanted to refer to. This question is specifically directed at Adv Sikhakhane, but Adv Mkhwebane and Adv Mpofu can also respond. It is very painful for all of us to see what this sell-out ANC government has been doing to Black professions. And specifically, what had been done to Adv Mkhwebane. What happened in the Section 194 impeachment was an outrage. So my first question is, what do we say to those people, the majority of them who are in the African National Congress, who still, some of them, farcically wants to claim that they're part of the liberation movement, and I emphasize farcically. What do we say to them about what they've done to Adv Mkhwebane and what they've done to Black professionals in general? Because in this room, I'm sure there are many who can relate how they have suffered at the hands of these people. The second part of the question is, what do we say to young Black professionals? Because they see what is happening. I'm looking on social media and I get a sense of despondency. You know the response, oh well, what else did you expect? She was going to lose. Adv Mpofu will always lose. And then the next kind of step that they take, well, we better toe the line. Otherwise, we've got no future. I don't want that to be seen as a negative question. I want it to be seen as a question asking for what do we say professionally to young Black professionals. And then lastly, we've seen how our state institutions are being hollowed out. What happened to the Public Protector's Office is a disgrace, but we can say the same about the whole judiciary, about the NPA, many of those in SAPS, etc. Now we must be worried also what is happening in the Independent Electoral Commission. Next year we're going to have an election. Is it logical for us, and I'm saying it as someone who started a new political party, is it logical and sensible for us to still hope that the electoral process relying on these state institutions that have been destroyed in the way they've been destroyed, and the corrosive way in which money has been used by Ramaphosa and his activists? What must we do? Is it a question of continuing to say, well, let's hope the elections succeed? It will bring some change? Or is it time for us to do something very, very different, radical, and deliberate. Thank you.
We can start.
Okay, thank you. My name is Mzonele Mani. I will brag later, not now. Safe to say on Twitter, I'm senior counsel. So, if I don't ask this room is a room which I call a room of comfort, a room where if anybody is saying you are wrong, you know it comes from a good place.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take a risk and ask this question here so that I'm corrected. I'm struggling, you know, in my past history I've done a lot of things, and I'm going to mention this because it's related to what I want to ask. I've been president of the Black Management Forum, participating Black Business Council, and all of that. So I've been associated with things called black. But recently, I have just got a new revelation about the word black. Notwithstanding that icons like people gave this term black a much more deeper meaning. But I'm struggling these days to call myself black. I want to call myself an African. And the reason, I've done a bit of research and I've asked around. A professor from UNISA assisted me with this, and he came up with an understanding of how this word black came about. And he says, no, by the way, before the 17th century, this thing did not arise. The black label came in the 17th century. So when the slavery was started and all of that. And then he says, the interesting thing is that in English, he says English is it's a Germanic language. And he says in German, they've got a different word for black, schwarz or something, and all of that. But the point he makes is that the black, when they refer to us, Africans, is not a color issue. It's something else. And he says it's a be black. Black civilization, wow. Black. So this is what black is about. And then when you then take it further, then you see, look at the black sheep of the family, the black knight, black devil, all of this. So, I mean, if you were to take anything black and me, there's not a resemblance. So why am I black? You know, so it's not a color issue. It's deeper than a color issue. So I want the intellectual in this room to settle this debate. Why are we accepting this? I mean, what Biko did, I think he was doing the best with what he was working with at the time. And I have no issues with him. But I think, you know, I always say when I argue with the comrades in the ANC, that we can't have a situation where the thinking stopped at Morogoro. You know, so it's now here. So don't tell me what happened in Morogoro. Let's talk about what's happening here now. So I'm saying now, I know Biko's black this, black that, red, you know, is one of my heroes, but we're here now. I'm saying, do we want to continue to call it? I mean, if you look at people we call white, they're not really white. I mean, Biko himself, he said this in one of his court proceedings, that you're more pink than white. That's what he said. And it's because whiteness, again, is not a color. It's purity. It's all the things that are good and all of that. So when you say black and you say white, you're defining something far deeper than just a color. So I wanted, as I sit down here, and I don't want to derail the discussion today. I really don't. It might be a subject of another day. But if there's space to just talk to this, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
I like it. There's lots of questions, guys. It goes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'm Richard Sizani. I'm a retired chairperson of the Public Service Commission. And PP was my colleague and will continue to be my colleague. I wouldn't ask, because PP and Adv both have experienced this, but I want to ask Adv Sikhakhane. I think the question that I really want to ask is a serious one, basically, for our development of the country, is who will judge the judges? What happens when the Constitutional Court is either genuinely or maliciously wrong?
Yeah.
Is there anything in other countries or anything systematically that as a country we can do to try and ensure that even the Constitutional Court can be corrected when it's wrong?
Sure.
Sanibonani, ngiyabingelela. Igama lami nguSheli, but bangibiza nje ngoba bathi silungu kakhulu igama lami. Ngwakavele ngisemile Sibongo, ngivela eNkandla. My question is basically to everyone that is here in the conference venue is, what are we doing? Black people, we've got a problem. We know the problem. Some of us see it coming from afar, and we give warning. I know in 2017 I cried tears. When I can remember, I think it was the 9th of December, I cried tears. And we warn people, unfortunately no one listened. But what I've noticed studying these people, I study these people and all their tactics, is that they plan. They don't have a 1 year, 2 year plan. They have a 50-year, 100-year plan. I'll make you an example. There's a lady called Adv Dali. She started a movement called the New Age Movement. Okay. Right now, the fruits of this movement is coming true now. This woman lived in the very early century, in the 1900s. But the fruits of what she planned is only coming true now, 100 years later. Adv Dali, first, their intention was to destroy the family unit, to introduce feminism, those who love feminism, and women's lib, and what you call independent women. That was all to destroy the family unit. This was 100 years ago. And they started all these liberation movements for women. To do what? To destroy the black men. To destroy men in general. But this was 100 years ago. But to cut my story short is, what are we doing as black people? Yes, Mr. Mangi, you are right about black being something else. But let's call it just for today, black. But my concern is, we know we've got a problem. They are sitting, especially right now, I'm just talking about the women now, I'm not talking about the men. They are facing a problem, but what are we doing? What is our plan? We're sitting here, I think we can all see do we have a fund of raising maybe 100 rand a month? Do we have something as not for our benefit, just to raise funds? If you look at the border bond, how it started, the Boers, the Dutch descendants, the position that we are in, they were in a far worse position when they lost the first Anglo-Boer War. What they did, they weren't educated, their farms were destroyed, they were sitting in camps and they were starving, and all their crops were burnt. A few Boers gathered like this, and they started to raise funds. I don't know how much it was, but why aren't we doing that? We are thinking about the elections, but we do not have a long-term plan. The elections is just around the corner, and maybe we won't be able to achieve anything. But what are we going to be doing in 10 years' time? What are we planning? That's what I'd like us sitting here to decide. What are we doing? Maybe a plan for 50 years, maybe we'll be dead. Alice Bride is dead, she's long gone. But her plan, we've got gays and lesbians and LGBT. I'm very sorry to offend anybody who affiliates, but it was a plan by Alice Bride and all the others who affiliated to that plan. And it's only, we are seeing the fruits. Our children are getting destroyed. We don't have families. No one is getting married because of that plan set 100 years early. In the 1200s, they wrote something called the Magna Carta. Do you know that we are being ruled by the Magna Carta? That's the one that influences the Constitution. In the 1200s. But it's a plan. We are being ruled by it. We as Black people must come up with a plan. Not an election plan, no, a different plan. Thank you. Oh, Baduzane, I think if we talk about the Black, it's all with spelling, right? Which is cast spells. So whatever words you use, you are casting a spell on yourself in whatever situation.
Words have power.
Yeah. If the Bible does say that, that's the power of the tongue.
Thank you. I'm going to take 2 more questions and then I'm going to hand over to the panel and then come back to you guys, so please don't worry.
Okay.
So can we just, I think you asked one. So just two more questions and then I'm handing over. Do you remember them? Oh, okay, no, the panel's going to take the questions now, okay.
Okay, thank you very much. I will just deal with some of the issues that were raised. Comrade Khan, you raised the issue of the Section 194 committee. It links to what I was saying, that we must just be conscious of not the immediate. You see, when the story of that committee gets told, in 50 years, 100 years' time, the points that you're making will become so self-evident that nobody will even believe that anyone actually thought this thing was not a fuss, as you call it. They think that it's obviously self-evidently a fuss there. But people don't understand that somebody had to do that to make sure that it's exposed, whatever it takes. And again, to give the what's called the bragging spin, if you like, or the positive spin to it, you have to appreciate that there was nothing that actually forced Advocate Mkhwebane to have to go through that painful process. There were many easy options, and there were no shortage of free advice that we were getting, and that she was getting as well. To say, look, it's obvious these people don't want you. Just go to them, make sure you cut the best deal, you get some money, you can go, maybe they'll make you an ambassador. You already have the, She could have done that. And there would have been nothing wrong, by the way, because all of us want someone else to sacrifice, but we don't want to sacrifice ourselves. So she could have done that, she would have been entitled to do it, there would have been nothing wrong. But what we fail to understand is that she elected herself to say, and she said this 1,000 times on television and even other things, to say, I'm doing this for the next generation, for the young Black woman, someone else who's going to be harassed like this. And if I'm going to be the sacrificial lamb, well, so what? Other people were killed. Other people, had to go through. Now, unless you make a decision like that, as I say, those of us who were tortured and what have you, and you just do the one, that's it. You know, it's not like it's nice to be tortured, but you have an option. You could just stay at home and do nothing and just go to school like everyone else. But you come out of that torture, you go back. I remember one time when I was released from long detention, and as soon as I finished, I was going to some meetings. I went home and I had food, and my mother said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to a meeting." I think she thought I was completely mad because you've just been released. How can you should be coming out to say, "I don't even want to see these people." In my life, yeah. So that's the point I'm making. So we have to celebrate people who are opening our eyes in that fashion. So you're quite right, Comrade Khan. Let me tell you for free. Yesterday, not a long time ago, yesterday, I just want to mention names. I spoke, just to come to your point, to two very, very senior people in the ANC. Both, we sat like this for something like 15 minutes. And both of them were like asking me, but how can they expect us to do this to a black woman? I'm telling you God's truth. Yeah, and they did it. That's how, when you say those people are betrayers and it's an understatement. For someone to do that, they ask, it's like, I didn't know how to answer this. This is really. Firstly, it should tell you, who is they? If you don't wake up and understand that we are being ruled in this country by forces, who is they? They're telling me, how can they ask us to do something so evil? These people have no heart. But these are people who are sellouts of the West description, worse than what Brian was telling us about. Betrayers of the West, because they know they are doing something wrong. They know they are doing something evil. But for a salary or a position or whatever it is, they do it. They still do it. That's what I'm not talking small fish. I'm talking but anyway. So that's what we're dealing with here. Now, Zanele, I think I agree. Let's leave the philosophical stuff. I think that we should work with black and white now, for now. Why? Because it take 400 years of having to undo the work that was done by Alex Haley and whatever. We know that, people say, we're not black or brown, to start for starters. But it's not only about that. If you read Biko, it's not about the pigmentation. Black is an ideological idea and a position. So is white, by the way. So is whiteness. That's why the DA was up in arms when the CIC Malema said, after we removed that guy called Trolley in Nelson Mandela Bay, says that we wanted to cut the throat of whiteness. That's what he said. And there was the same uproar, nonsensical uproar, like they killed the Boer or whatever. Like, as if he was saying you must take knives and go to look for white people and cut their throats. They knew he was not saying that. He was saying they cut the throat of whiteness. Whiteness is not a person. It's a concept. It's the idea of white supremacy. The idea that certain people are superior than others. It's a concept that has developed over centuries. So it's not like whiteness as we mean it like this. But anyway, I'm just saying, forget about even those. Just for functional purposes, we should work with the terminology that we have. But what we need to do is to unpack it, and I agree with you there. It's like this thing about the Boer. If you were saying the Boer or a farmer, it means someone who's looking after chickens and not. But we know what Boer means in our context, so we always have to be educating. But anyway, because whatever we call it, we can call it, I don't know, whatever we call it, but you know what it means. We can say we are water. But water will be the ones who are oppressed of the land. So it still means the same thing. The actual label doesn't matter. Who judges the judges? I'll leave that one to Muzi because I have said, if you have YouTube and you listened to the case that I did, the rescission case, for the Zuma imprisonment, you will know that when I stood up in the morning, that case went on until the evening. But the first thing when I stood up and said, good morning, whatever, I said, this case is about who will judge the judges. And I don't know if they understood that, and that is what I was saying, as you were saying that. What happens if they get it wrong? Think about the days of the death sentence. If they get it wrong, it means they're dead. So what must happen? Who then must judge that process? But anyway, it's a deep topic that I don't want to get into now. But one day we will get a judiciary that is made up of people of integrity who are not swayed by newspaper headlines, by conventional wisdom, and by what the ruling classes want to hear, and who must they hate, who must be loved, but by simply applying the law. Actually, the law is such a simple thing. You don't. If to be honest, we shouldn't even have to go to university for law. You know when something is right and when it is wrong. You know it in your inner core, and you know when it's unjust and so on. So that's a real issue of it's a very sensitive issue. But also that it goes to the blackness issue, because we are told that transformation is appointing black judges or women judges. That's the biggest load of rubbish you'll ever hear. Because it's not about your skin color. If you do not, and if you are, mostly just said, we are all white, and I don't know if people understood what you were saying. What it means is that the system has created us in the image of the white person. So we have to judge ourselves. If they say I'm a good advocate, then I'm a good advocate. If they say I'm a bad one, then I'm a bad one. And I must also sit there and think, I can't come out of my house because that's what they say. That's the stuff that Nico was talking about when he says the liberation starts with the mind first. So you just know who you are. Now, I want to rush quickly to the question of solutions. I'm not being cynical. I'm tired of people asking, why are we not doing this? Why are we not doing this? Who's going to do it? You must do it yourself. When the Bruder Bond or whatever it is, or AfriForum or what, that somebody came up and actually did it. So I want to challenge this house here, this minute, in this room. Let's do it here. Yeah. Let's do it. For those who are religious, let's assume that God brought us here. Hallelujah. The bishop says you must stand. Thank you very much. Yeah, and from now on you can call me Bishop Mkhwebane. Let me. Thank you so much, Bishop, for that. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do something very practical right now, this minute. You say that the Buddha one raised money and so on. I've counted here, I think there are 74 people, if I'm correct. 74 people, each one of us must commit that, let's say, okay, so that some of us are not very rich. That before the end of the year, of this year, we're going to pop out 1,000 rand each. Yes. One. Thank you. Do you agree? Yes. Okay. Now here's the other thing. If you agree to that, I, myself, I'm going to put 1,000 rand each for all of you, 111. I'm going to match that and put another 74,000 rand. And then we will have, I'm sure other people will hear about it. Okay. It doesn't even have to be the end of the year. I'm putting the ball back in your court. Yes. As soon as you've collected yours, I'll put mine. If you do it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow. If you do it by the end of the year, I'll do it by the end of the year. But what am I saying? What I'm saying is that we should have, we must stop lamenting and saying, why are we not doing this? Let's do it. Who else is going to do it? What must he do? Why must people have to die for you? You know, you must die yourself. So yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. We'll take that money, maybe we'll find someone else and say, okay, now we've raised, as this room, we've raised 150, right? Then someone else will say, okay, I'll match you 150 and make it 300 or whatever. And then we can employ someone, then we have our own version of Afrifaram or whatever. And when that happens, we will say it started on the 30th of September, we were sitting in Pretoria. So if we do that as black people, then things are going to happen. Instead of crying, oh, poor me, oh, I'm oppressed. Get it out of it and let's do something about it.
Yeah, okay. I'll tell you what I would ask you to do. It's not about money. I will ask you and see how brave you are. Comrade Carl asked me this question. I want to brag about this. By the way, I'm writing a book, and so it will take me many weeks to tell you that Comrade Carl asked me this question. I'm a trained case soldier. Me and him have gone through the same thing, and stuff I don't like to talk about. When I came to Joburg as a teenager, he knows I had 3 bullets in my body. So it's something we've suffered for the African National Congress you're asking about. So when I criticize it, I'm not coming from an intellectual, academic, it's a party I was born into, joined when I was 17. And you asked me very direct question about what do we say to those in the ANC who are part of the liberation movement but have done what they've done. I think I've come to understand now, I've said this earlier, Comrade Carlin, I think you must know how I feel about the ANC. It took me a month in this 2022 to really emotionally cut ties with the ANC, emotionally. Because we were born into it, our parents died for it, our houses were burned for it. I think the ANC for me is like discovering that your mother was a prostitute when you are old. And that's how I feel about the ANC, and that's how I feel about the people you are talking about. I feel that my parents who died, my mother buried next to the road because of the ANC is a betrayal. And all along as a teenager, I was in the midst of something I thought was a mirage of a revolution. But it was an old betrayal by old elites since 1910 who had been brought up by the British and did not really understand what the struggle is about. And so, what I think is happening, we have not done what we've done to Busisiwe Mkhwebane to a single apartheid killer. And that shows you, my answer to you is that it shows you the sickness of the castration of a black mind. Watch Twitter today, I'm not on the social media. It is black people who are going to be ridiculing all of you. And I'm asking you not to hate them. It's the castration of the black soul of self-hate and the desire to please. And so the ANC people we are talking about who've done this to her and have never done it to De Kock, have never done it to any other killer who's white. It's not anything except fear of whiteness. And I think fear of whiteness for me, as I've realized now in my 50s, is that fear is led by the party that I thought was a liberation movement. And the second question you asked is, what do we say to young black professionals? Well, we mustn't do something in South Africa. It's a process. It's really, I don't know whether this morning I was reading the story about Noah in the Bible. Apart from being an MK, I wanted to be a priest first. I had two ambitions when I was young. I wanted to be a priest and it didn't happen. You don't ask me why. I'm a Catholic and there were things I would have to sacrifice. No, they didn't take me at a priesthood college. And the next one, and this is true, it's an ambition you will see in the book I'm writing. I actually wished to die in combat with the police so that MK people would come back into the country and free our people. That's my ambition. It's cynical, sad ambition, morbid ambition. But it's because we all believe in that. And so what do we do about young black professionals? I think we must try and cleanse ourselves of the dirt inside our spirit of whiteness and black hatred. And the self-hate. The reason you will be on Twitter today and all of this by black people who are sitting in Rosebank in coffee shops trying to please their white friends, it's not because they hate you. It's actually because they hate themselves. And so what we must do about black professionals, and we try it in our small spaces and we get ridiculed, is to bring back in black people. And we'll get that debate on another one day because I have a lot to say about it, but not today. To bring back, to heal black people from self-hate. It's the first thing we must do. The third question you were asking is state institutions. So about black professionals, I've always understood that we live, in my profession, Dali knows this, we talk about it. Our young black lawyers are sitting there trying to mimic some white lawyer and they want to become and all of this. And it's because it's our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents. We lived to work because we saw whiteness as a source of resource, both for our soul and our resources, as a standard to which we must aspire. And so what about state institutions that you talk about, Colin Cow? I only answer this question this way. We need to analyze this thing I call a lullaby, post-apartheid, neo-apartheid South Africa, not post. Right? It's neo-apartheid South Africa. And the hollowing out of state institutions, all of them, by the way, I have suggested before that these three arms of government called the judiciary, the legislature, executive must be collapsed now. Collapse them now so that we start all over again, or our people will be like this for the next 200 years. I'm not saying this. I know someone has gone out to say I'm a nihilist because I was trained with guns. I just want chaos. I do want chaos if it will lead to liberation of people. But I'm suggesting it because right at the beginning, we must analyze this thing called post-apartheid South Africa. You know, a time comes for every oppressive system to reinvent itself, to get out certain symbolicals and get away certain things. And we are happy because we were fooled in 1994 to think freedom was coming. It was the system of oppression reinventing itself, capitalism reinventing itself for its continued survival. And so I think what we need to do is to collapse that system. Through what Dali is saying, he's going to give money, but this is what I'm going to ask we do, is that we are 65 million people in South Africa. It's a shame that 65 million people keep complaining about 5% of white people. 89 people, guys, came in 1652. 89. And 400 years later, we're still complaining about 5% that control. There is something wrong with us. There is something wrong with us, and I'm suggesting this. It will take 100,000 South Africans, literally, to get people in the union buildings and the legislature in Cape Town and everywhere else out. And I'm saying, while Dali is paying 74,000 rand, I'm suggesting that we actually must think seriously. Because I don't believe in neoliberal controlled electoral systems. That system is manipulated already. Is that you must collapse the system, rebel against the system, bring it down on its knees, and start following. I will leave that part, and Dali will be collecting the money. But quite seriously, guys, I do think, I've been saying this a number of times, and we'll say this, it's got to do with our soul as Black people. There's really something wrong with 85% being controlled for 400 years by 10% or 5%. It's not white people that are the problem. There's something in our soul, in our head, in our minds that is not right. And when you see a tweet today that calls all of you a group of the wounded, please forgive them. It's a manifestation of what we must change. Oh yeah, now they said we're coming. I heard that. But you know why we were bothered? Why those of you who were bothered? I'm telling you, if some Black person had said that, it's a white man who said that. And so we think it has some weight. It's absolute rubbish. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I don't know him. I've never been corrupt. Brian is not corrupt. I don't know what he means corrupt. Why were we worried? It's a white person who said this. And because it's a white person who said this, everybody else is jittery about it. There's something wrong with the Black mind. And I think we must change it now and collapse this government and this system now and start all over for our children to live in a better country. We are actually led by sellouts, traitors, and people who've sold their souls right at the top. All of us.
That's why I joined the EFF.
Yes, what I would say is that
Sorry, you're just not answering the question.
Who judge all the difficult question? Yeah, I think we must look at the systems, guys. I mean, I don't believe in systems now. I think our systems have been corrupted, all of them. And I think you know, these systems, I don't even want to say who will judge the judges. I think we must start all over again, create a system of the judiciary that links up with the will of the people. I don't believe that 11 people wearing gowns, most of whom are dropouts from the legal profession, should really, really determine the future of a nation. I don't believe it. I believe that ordinary people must find a way. And there are systems all over the world where courts are not the last word. It's not true that this thing you are sold about the rule of law is like a lollipop to a child. And we believe it because we don't know anything. This constitution itself requires us to change it. and create a liberation manifesto for our people. That's all that we need. And as we get opposition, it really doesn't matter. We must deal with this once and for all. I'm tired of preaching the same thing. I think the system has collapsed yesterday. I regret the fact that when I was recruited to go to the army, I didn't, because I know what I would do.
Yes, thank you so much. I think what Adv Mpofu said about going to court, Khan, he should have told you or everyone that when we were in Section 194 committee, I think he was there supportive through and through. SCMB's deputy PP. Because no, this one, and I mean, he helped us so much. But we were, when we were going to court, we knew that we will be losing. I think when even Busisiwe was still alive, we were saying this battle is not for the court, but this battle is for the public to see. Because for us, we were saying, irrespective of what they are saying, can you as the public have your own thinking and understanding what is really happening? I remember as well, whilst I was in the Public Protector's Office, who Adv Sikhakhane has mentioned it, would anyone who was appearing or if we are taken to court, one of the legal advisors once said, you know what, it doesn't matter anymore because you will argue and be blue in your face, but we know that they will win. Even if they can say this black color is not black, it's white, the judges will grant in their favor. And I mean, I'm speaking about evidence and something which is there. I mean, we Section 194 committee, when Mlambo said this with his public protector, but with me, he said the following. When judges will be saying, I said this in my report, and you ask a witness, where in the report is that said? I mean, this was a clear daylight robbery, but I'm glad that you yourself, as the public, you could see for yourself what indeed transpired. So with this gathering, I mean, there's a commitment which we had, there's another commitment this side. I didn't see them standing up. In the military one, I didn't see them standing up as yes, but I think going forward, the intention is we are changing the system, we are changing the narration, we are doing things, we're not going to entertain to be labeled, because we are labeled. I mean, we are black, you are dark, or you are corrupt. Tina, let's just label ourselves positively, stand in the gap, establish this fund, and we can see as well what do we do. Zonel, I thought you asked about the constitution. Is this constitution really for us going forward? Because that's one element which we also have to think about. So I think going forward, we will have to just stick to that, implement it. Well, some of us are very much action orientated. One will run with that, especially this one. I'm running with this one and this one. No, I will take it. I mean, I didn't mention earlier, my sisters would tell you that when my mother was still alive, she used to say, is calabash at the King's Palace. Apparently it's too big and heavy. So they would drink, but they won't finish that. And they couldn't even pick it up. So my mother used to say, they will never break me. So, and that meaning, if it comes to that, my husband, I hope Ulale. I'm ready for training. Just tell me, please. Yeah, thank you.
Carl, I just wanted to tell you this to illustrate the point about the ANC you saying. Dali goes through a lot. We all get reported. I'm sure I'll be reported for what I said today. I've realized that for every black professional, if it hasn't happened to you, if they come for me, if white people come for me, and I don't mean you come, you know you're not. If they come for me, I know that the ANC will never defend me. I saw it. It will never defend me. So I'm prepared to fight. I will fight my own battles. Alone, maybe I'll go to the FF or ATM or UDM, but I can never go to people I grew up with and struggled with, that I was trained with, because I realized they were sellouts.
Thank you. I just wanted to have a second bite, but I just wanted to say something about what Muzi is saying regarding the collapse of the system. I agree with him. In fact, I was lucky enough to be one of the first people he told about this idea, was before he said it in some podcast. The point I want to make is that we must be versatile. So we must do that solution, we must do this other one, and I'm sure here there are 70 other solutions. We have to do the one or the other. Because we're not going to be liberated by one thing. Anyone who was involved in the struggle will know that we did 100,000 things, and we probably don't even know which one worked better than the one at what point. But the point is just to achieve the objective. And just to come to the point about the numbers, it's something that, and maybe that's what Mzanel is talking about I come from a school of thought that says that political freedom is meaningless without economic freedom. Completely. It's so, once you can start there, then it's almost like a hallelujah moment. So until we accept that what we are in this country, as African people in particular, although we are a numerical majority, but we are an economic minority. And until you resolve that paradox, we're never going to go anywhere. You'll be moving around the same circle like this. Because we might look like we're many, as Muzi says, well, maybe 55 million or even 60. So then, even our kids say, but we tell them all these sad stories about apartheid. And they say, okay, but how many were you? Then we were 30 million. And then these people were doing all these terrible things. They were 30 million at that time. And then because they think it was that easy. But what you don't understand is that we are dealing with an economic majority. Actually, we are nothing. I'm sorry to say that. In terms of the economy, we are nothing. Zero, even less than 1%. If it wasn't for the fact that you have to give your labor power and your buying power to the system, you are good as non-existent. You are nothing. You are not a factor economically. And that is what needs to change. We will never, ever be liberated or be proud or have dignity or walk tall if we don't have our land. We can't. That's the starting point. This thing called colonization means to create a colony. Right? That's what colonization is. To create a colony out of that. A colony is not created by air or the leaves. It's created by taking somebody's land. Territory. It's all about land and territory. So until you reverse that, the original sin, whatever you do, you can jump up and down, you can vote every minute, every 2 seconds of your life. You're just wasting your time. And I think that's it's a very important like wake-up moment for us to say that until we resolve this economic question, because that's what it's all about. I mean, when you vote or you go to school or whatever, the aspiration is not political as such, it's economic, because you want to have food on the table, you want to have a blanket over your, and a house and all that. So that's where the original problem is.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we've been talking too much and we've only got 5 minutes in the venue. So I'd like to thank the panel for sharing their wisdom and their thoughts with us. We're going to have a raffle with Mama Mkhwebane now, and then I'd like to ask Babu Sikhakhane to get that thing sorted out. But thank you. Can you give the panel a round of applause for a beautiful session? And I'm going to hand over to Paul and Mama Mkhwebane.
Thank you so much to everyone. We have, we didn't conclude, but I think we summarized what we are going to be doing. We were recording. Yes, I think. Yeah. Okay, so the conclusions we have, we will send everyone the key pointers from the panel 1 and the panel 2, what we are here for, and the names and surnames and the phone numbers, we have them. We will then expect the 1,000 by the end of the year. Or as soon as it's there, I will tell Adv Mpofu, and then we deposit it. And the other issue is the training, and what I've picked up is that those who are 100,000 people who are willing to undergo that particular process, it's them.